Hello, this is Flat Art Show episode 7. This is a conversation from January 2025 between myself, Evan Dom, and Reimena Yee. Her work can be found at reimenayee.com. This includes the webcomics Alexander the Servant and the Water of Life and The World in Deeper Inspection. She also runs the Creator's Guide to Comics Devices at comicsdevices.com. Okay, I think that's all I have to tell you. Here you go.
I think like the one thing that we share between our generation is that we were at the point where webcomics and webcomics on their own websites were like the big thing back then. I think in your case, in your generation, it was a bit more of like a Wild West where people were like constantly like posting really crazy, really ambitious, really exciting experimental comics work, and it was all online. And then like people were starting to realize, there were all these like really free, these free cool things that I can read online, and I guess like everyone was just scrambling, trying to figure out, okay, what is this new media? What is this industry? How do we, as creators, like monetize this? And this was during the time when Kickstarter was still a new thing. People were still like kind of like not sure what Kickstarter is and what they could do to like utilize it, and all that sort of stuff. And then like bleeding into my generation. I think it was just like we had, like for my generation, we had a bit more of an understanding of like how to navigate like webcomics and how to quote unquote make a career out of it. But this was also happening at the same time as platforms like Tapas or Webtoons were becoming more and more of a thing. So it was during my generation when webcomics were starting to transition from like a phase of like Wild Westness into becoming corporatized. Yeah, so that's like basically like the distinction that I can sort of like come up with like
Yeah.
for our generations. Yeah.
You started serializing online in like the early 10s, right?
Yeah,
Well, I
like
forget what the comic is called.
2013, early 2013.
What is the comic called? TW something?
The World in Deeper Inspection, 3D.
So you came into that at what feels to me like a transitional moment. I started Rice Boy in college in 2006, and the internet was in like this dramatic state of flux it feels like it was crystallizing into what it has been around 2012, 2013 to me. But now it's kind of running into a wall again. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. Yeah, I think it's just what everyone's been feeling nowadays. The historical point when social media was like becoming a capital T thing. It was starting to become like the internet was starting to become like such an essential part of daily living. Like all of this like internetization of like life, like it's starting to reach its logical like extreme, and we're starting to see like people like push back against it at the same time as these like things are like collapsing around us. So how like Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff is like it's crumbling. Like the infrastructure of the past 10 years is just like coming down right beneath our feet, and like right now everyone's just like trying to figure out, okay, what do we do next? How do we like transition? And the problem is that we don't even know what to transition into, because I remember back then in like doing like the 2010 like starting in 2010 or like 2013 or whatever, somewhere between that time space where like it felt like a natural progression between like people aggregating into like websites, that like aggregate stuff, like how we used to have those big sites that like BuzzFeed or like 9gag or like whatever it is that that collect memes of the day or like funny news or whatever. So it's like it was an easy transition between those kind of things into like social media. But now it's like we don't really have anything to transition out from social media into whatever it is that we might jump into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see people articulate that terribly clearly. I have a sense of general sort of backlash against the status quo that we're talking about. You wrote this thing, one of your headlines is, if artists are so eager to have the old internet back, why is it not yet a bigger thing? Like, part of the reason why I've gotten so obsessed with your website over the past like couple weeks is that you really have like a vision. You're really trying to take hold of a space that is maybe it's like out of fashion. Maybe people don't go to websites, but you are fucking taking it seriously and articulating a huge amount of your thought and your approach to your work and everything. And it's extremely, I don't know, encouraging, inspiring to me. And it's bizarre that I don't see it very much. I don't see people taking ownership, not just of having a website, but taking ownership of a lot of their life as independent artists on the internet in ways that I would like to see, I guess.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, thoughts. Oh, hot takes. Like, I don't know. I just feel that a lot of people, a lot of artists, especially, they tend to more like easily like accept the status quo for some reason. Like, let me try to articulate what is it that I want to say here.
Yeah, we don't want to sound too rude.
Yeah, we don't want to sound too hot takey. Don't want to be too spicy.
But I think I agree with you.
Yeah, no. I was just saying that like I feel like habits die hard. Like for the past like 10 to 15 years or so, we have been like ensconced in this like truism that if we post what we think we like, no. Actually, you know what? I'm going to rephrase that. This truism that virality is important to your career, and you need to achieve it by whatever means possible, even if that means like tailoring yourself to an algorithm and to the user interface or the user designs of like a social media platform. So like you would tailor your art and you would tailor your own like persona, and your own brand, so to speak, to whatever is the most popular or the most like viral thing on whatever social media you're on. And I think a lot of artists are starting to realize the consequences of doing that, and that all of this is an artifice. I have this like particular like hot take in my brain. The way that I word it is that a lot of people, they are skeptical towards AI, but they don't show that same skepticism towards the algorithm. And the algorithm is a construct that is created by the same tech bros who construct AI. And I find that very funny. I'm like, I don't understand why people tend to like worship like playing or gaming with the algorithm so much, because it's like again, like I say, it's a construct. Someone created it, and the algorithm is not it's not made for others. It's made for brands. It's made for corporates. And it's made for people who can post like 10 billion like posts in one day. Like, it's like whatever it is that algorithm is like designed for, it's not conducive to art making, to creative practice, and like
or to the type of attention that the work that you and I do demands and leans into, right?
Yeah, basically,
it's parallel to the AI art thing. The AI art maybe the reason that it's seen differently is that the AI art thing is so much easier to point to, and it has so much more of a like genre cyberpunk post-apocalyptic texture to it. Like it's louder maybe, but I see the parallel that you're saying.
Yeah. I think like the thing about AI is that it's easier to like point out its hypocrisies because it's like it's there, you can see it immediately. But with like the algorithm, it's insidious. It changes your behavior, but in the way that in which that you don't that unless you are as obsessive about like the history of the internet culture as I am or several other people are, like it's not a thing that you notice. And it's something that you do actually have to like consciously like fight back against. You got to be like conscious about the way that you behave online. Yeah.
It feels absolutely fucking formative to me. I think about like how LiveJournal was like the first big proto social media thing that I was a part of, and a lot of these things, like the way that Instagram used to work, the way that Twitter used to work, a lot of these platforms present their material in this self-evident way where you just follow people and you see the things chronologically as they're posted, which is like an organic way of seeing the stuff. And I think that we assume that that's how it's working, even when it's extremely mediated by algorithms that are just interested in getting you to stay on the app at any cost, But yeah, it's probably hard to see that if you're not thinking about it, maybe.
Yeah. And also the other thing is that I think we don't have a lot of like popular artists who are modeling like alternative like behaviors of like being on the internet. So like you don't see like the big like popular like internet online artists, having their own websites. They're always on social media. They're always posting on social media. They're on TikTok. They are like whatever it is. Yeah. They are not like they're not taking the time to like properly like centralize everything on their websites. And because like people like to follow whatever is cool, like having your own website is not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it is cool. It is cool to me, but it's like people like I don't know, like awe is really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, and the websites that they do have or that they did have have just been sort of atrophying and dissolving.
Yeah, it's
You
like
get into
like the white space.
Yeah, you get into any artist and you just find a bunch of dead links from years and years ago, from when they used to have
Yeah.
a website. Yeah, it's not cool, but it's like and like, do people? Part of this, it feels sad to me because, like, I want to maintain a space like that. I want to take ownership of whatever spaces I can take of, and I want to see the platforms as, like, compromised instruments to build an audience to direct back to the stuff that I want them to, be interested in if they're interested in. But is there something just, like, uselessly backwards looking and bleak about that? I mean, we can't like individually change the whole culture of modern internet browsing, I mean, what do we do? Do people go to your website?
I
Some
don't really
people.
care about that. Like, but there are people who do go to my websites. I'm okay. So there are actually a lot of people who visit the Comics Devices website, which I'm glad of, because if there has to be a website that I want people to go to, it would be that one. But like for my own my own name websites, WEBCOMICS.com, my blog or whatever, it's okay. I don't get the same kind of views as I do if I was just like posting on a social media platform. But at least I know a handful of people read my blog posts. And I think that's enough for me, because the one thing that I really appreciate, like having my own blog, having my own website, is that I don't feel so pressured by eyes. And by that, I mean that I am on my own website. I only have to cater to myself, like
Right.
I don't have to tailor content to algorithm, to audience, to whatever. Like on my own website, I can just post whatever I want. I can just do whatever. I can say whatever hot take I want, and like I guess like only the most dedicated people would actually go and look at it, and I'm fine with that. It's not like in social media where it's like if I post whatever it is I want to say, there is the risk that it will just become like overblown or whatever, and then like you get like all these like randos like saying nonsense on your post, whether or not it's relevant to the thing that you have been posting, and it's like
Yeah,
no, I don't
who
appreciate
have
that. Yeah. Yeah.
people who have like no interest in you or no context for what you're saying or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just they're just replying to your post for the sake of clout or whatever, and like I don't care for that, so that's why I prefer like just taking the time to use my own website and my blog as a space for myself to be as an artist, as a person who is online.
Yeah. I feel that. I mean, when I started Third Voice 2 years ago, I like rebuilt my whole site and have tried to make it more of a space that that I can build stuff into and take more seriously. But this is a career thing for you too, right? I mean, like your career trajectory through comics depends on getting, a bunch of people interested in what you're doing. So it can't just be for you. I don't really know where I'm going with that train of thought.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. It's just that you can't like totally like super isolate yourself, because otherwise like you won't be able to like reach the audience that you already have or you might want to reach. Because like the fact is that everyone, like not everyone, I mean most people are on social media, And people on social media tend to be very stubborn about leaving, about like leaving the platform because it's like super comfortable for them. But I get that, and that's why I'm still posting on Blue Sky. But I do have my limits. Like for me personally, I would never ever go on TikTok because I just don't vibe with the way they do things over there. Videos and like having to post like cute like sound bites and like meme responses and all that. I'm just like, oh no, that's totally not for me. Not as a person and not as an artist. Like I just I can't like conceptualize like a way to like operate on TikTok, like honestly. So I'm just like, no, I'll never get on that, because like it's not me. But I'm fine.
I think
I
agree with you.
Yeah. I'm fine with like micro posting. Like
TikTok,
text.
there's something generationally incomprehensible to me about TikTok. I mean, video as a form, I have done video stuff. I'm comfortable working in that medium to some extent, but like there's some culturally it's incomprehensible to me, and it's so built into that that sort of low register of attention algorithmic thing. And my whole career has been built around making stuff that like demands a lot of attention and just finding the small percentage of people who want to give it that attention, right? So,
exactly.
yes. But you'd think that there are those people everywhere, even on TikTok, because there's so many fucking people there. Is the counter argument, maybe?
I don't know. I feel like, like high contacts, like fanatics like us, I think they exist, as evidenced by you and I being here. But also, like, I think we are also the kind of people who would look. We don't really like comment or like post or anything, So I feel like it's harder to tell if if people who are interested in like intellectual discourse or like analysis or like whatever it is. It's hard to tell that it's still a thing anymore because of how quiet people we tend to be. So this is my opinion anyway.
He sought greatness in everything he did. He conquered the known world in a few years.
Okay, you made this post, I guess, a couple years ago called Creating, Making, Giving, which feels like a kind of mission statement about your approach to working in comics with the Alexander the Great comic. But you articulate some stuff in here that I have not seen really articulated before. You're saying this thing about oh, sorry, this is awkward podcast material. You to just read through it as I'm talking to you. You were saying this thing about like often the career trajectory for webcomics people is to go into publishing graphic novels and getting advances and becoming sort of infrastructurally invested in that sort of way. And you say, quote, "For me, though, I still want to make webcomics. There are some things that webcomics can do that the current publishing landscape is not ready to nurture. Passion projects, extremely ambitious and weird stories for older audiences in odd genres. I still see a place here for me. I'm not sure if I can leave it fully." Does anyone fucking say a thing like that? I feel like I've said a thing like that. I've built the last 2 years of my life around that exact kind of trajectory. It's just, it's exciting to see you articulate that, and to take the work that you're doing now so fucking seriously in this way that, like, who knows? You probably couldn't take it that seriously if you had to pitch it incessantly to publishers or whatever. How has that gone for you since you articulated that thought? I
I still back it, I mean, I can't help it. Like I owe my entire like publishing career to webcomics. Like I would have never become the artist that I am without like, without webcomics like giving me the motivation and the inspiration and the opportunity to like post the thing that I wanted and to finally find the audience that appreciates my artistry. And I hopelessly like believe in like webcomics as like the great equalizer in terms of like, going full tilt reco with the kind of work that you want to do the most, that has little chance of like being picked up in like the current traditional publishing market. Like I enjoy making middle grade, or young adult, whatever it is that editors are crazy for right now. But like my real niche, the thing that I love to read and make the most, the thing that I feel that I'm actually naturally good at is literary, experimental, artsy, cerebral, historical fiction. And that's not a thing that you see in the traditional publishing market, especially for like comics. I mean, we do see it in like prose and poetry and all of that, but not really in comics.
Not in our trash little medium here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like some development is happening. Like we're starting to see like more like genre adult comics publishers popping up, but I feel like it's not happening fast enough or in a big enough way. And even if it does, like especially in the English language market, it may or may not end up having the same kind of breadth of content and style as in like, like in comics in Europe or Japan. And for me, I'm not going to wait till the market catches up. So I stick to webcomics, and allow myself to exercise my artistic voice. And I'm extremely protective of like webcomics, like freedom as a form to like facilitate such indulgence.
Hell yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely. Awesome. I mean, you can't wait for the industrial circumstances to catch up with the thing. And like, is it ever going to catch up with the exact thing that you want to do? Maybe not. I mean, it's not going to catch up. The industry is not going to allow for the particular thing that I want to make. I certifiably know. And like, so there's no waiting, At a certain point, you have a sense of what interests you and what you can propel yourself through on the basis of that interest. It's a way of making it sustainable. I mean, it's just exciting to hear somebody say that, and to hear
dedication.
And to hear somebody say it who is doing something as weird and complicated and committed as the Alexander comic. Maybe I don't know. We'll talk about the comic in particular later, maybe. But you have done work with publishers, right? I don't really know what your whole trajectory is through comics.
I don't know. Are we getting into that right now? Do we want to talk about that?
I just an outline. I mean, if we're talking in the area of like our relationships to working within and without the big fucking infrastructures, I would be interested to know more about the different sorts of work you've done.
Okay. So the overview is that I make webcomics at the same time as I'm making graphic novels for traditional publishers. But I also do other things for comics, like make resources and blogs and stuff. So I'm a Renaissance man, as some of my friends would say. But anyway, so my first webcomic, I first published it in early 2013. And that was on my own website, It still was on website. I've never actually like moved it anywhere or mirrored it or whatever. But anyway, So the World in Deeper Inspection, I posted it in 2013, and that was like kind of like something that I was working on while I was like studying and like doing my bachelor's in science, like throughout college and uni. So I was just doing that on the side. I wasn't really thinking of like, oh, I could actually like make comics as like a career, even though at the back of my mind, I would so love to be like a published author of some sort, whether it's like in prose or in comics. But anyway, I wasn't really thinking of it as like a possibility back then. So during my second year of university, I got to the point in the World in Deeper Inspection that I had to like tell the backstory of one of the main characters there in order for the rest of the World in Deeper Inspection webcomic to make sense. And so that led to The Carpet Merchant of Constantinia, which I initially like thought it would be like, oh, it was just going to be like 100-page backstory thing, wee hooey, and then it ended up being like a 2-volume 600 page like monster. And so I was working on that in between 2016 to May 2018. So I was 21 to 23 during the time of when I was making this. And that ended up actually being my first ever completed graphic novel, because it was like big enough to be a graphic novel. So,
and it's like it's self-contained, even though it's a part of. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I did a lot of work on this one, so I may as well like try to look for an agent, a publisher to publish it. And while I was thinking these thoughts at the same time, I was starting to become quite like cynical about my prospects, like in science, in academia, because like initially I wanted to like professionally work in like research or whatever it is that you do in the ivory tower. But it was becoming less and less of a possibility. I couldn't imagine myself like a future of myself doing that. So I was like, okay, so the only thing that I am actually good at is drawing and writing and making comics. So okay, so I have the Carpet Merchant book. I have this thing that I've got to like figure out how to turn into like a career. Otherwise, like, my parents would think it would be a waste. So I was like, okay, well, I gotta like hustle, I gotta like speed run, like getting a book deal and stuff. So that's what I did in like the last few months of my degree, my bachelor's degree. I just like, okay, I'm just going to pitch it to an agent, I'm going to pitch it to a publisher, and I'm going to also submit it for awards. So this is what I did, and luckily everything fell into place at the right time or at the same time. So like I secured my agent Jan Dillon, and I got the Carpet Merchant like a book deal, and I also got like the Eisner nomination for it for Best Digital Comic in 2018.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and also it so happened that Random House Graphic was starting up at the time, and I was lucky enough to be part of their first year list. So that was how I got Seance Tea Party and My Aunt is a Monster like published. It was through that. So like all these things were just like happening all at once. So I was like,
so those are, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The Seance Tea Party is something you did like on contract, not on your own initiative.
So like those two were like my actual like, just strictly traditionally published like graphic novels.
How have you found it? I mean, you're still kind of working in both of those worlds, right?
Yeah.
How does it compare to you in retrospect?
I'm fine with it. I am pretty pragmatic. So I go to where the opportunities are, and I make sure that the opportunity like fits the work that I'm doing and the future work that I want to do. And if the opportunity doesn't exist, I make one up for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I do have this belief that there's some works that are more suited for commercial and other works that are more suited for like passion projects, and I have been pretty good at making that distinction, you know. So like with the Alexander comic, I did try to see whether or not there would be interest from like traditional publishers for it before I started making it into a webcomic. And then, this was happening when COVID-19 was becoming a thing. And then I was like, oh boy, well, no publisher has enough money to like fund this huge, expensive, full-colored graphic novel of something that's super risky. So I'm like, okay, oh well, I'll just do it as a webcomic then. So, I mean, like, I wasn't like, I wasn't hinging it on like, on whether or not it would get like a commercial interest. Like for me, it's like it's one of those works that I think that I need to do. I feel compelled to do it, and like it's very rare for me to have something like that. So I'm just going to like listen to it. I'm just going to like, okay, well, it wants me to make it exist. So I will. So I'll just listen to it and I'll just do it. So so that's what it is. So I just been like, publishing is a webcomic, and luckily it's had like good reception and interest from publishers after the fact. But yeah, again, it wouldn't have had the opportunities that it does have now if I had not like, just pursued it independently on my own.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you got to take that seriously, that motivating interest thing. And it feels miraculous to me that there is a space to pursue that within, your career and within the internet and the culture. And I was thinking that, like, you can't pitch a book like that maybe in a way that a publisher's going to commit to sight unseen, but making the thing, it becomes self-evident, and surely there is some way of building it into a more, infrastructural career aspect once it's out there.
Yeah, I'm basically just like trying to like figure out how to smuggle it into like the institution, as I'm making it. Yeah, I mean, also like it feels very different like working on Alexander, because like I've had like years of like experience at that point now, and like I'm like super aware of like how the industry works, and all of that. So it was easier for me to like come up with a strategy for it, whereas like with the War and Depot Inspection and the Carpet Merchant, I was just like, oh well, I'll just post, I'll just do whatever it is, and if something comes up, great. If something doesn't, oh well, never mind. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I have had the exact same feeling. Like a lot of my early webcomics work was just like, put it out there and see what happens, and an audience sort of finds it through no real fault of my own. But now that I can look back on it and look back on my various career angles throughout those years, I feel like I can be more intentional about it now in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just like, as we get more experience, become more self-conscious about, like our work and our intentions. And
Yeah.
how like
And
how,
we're working
how,
within.
yeah.
You go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that is how it's like, our intention is also like how it aligns with our future, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
We also comics as a industry, I guess, and the internet as a space are both so volatile and changing, right? That like living and working in these spaces for a decade or whatever gives you some sense of the shifting big picture thing too, in ways that you can't quite predict, I would imagine. Like these shifts that you're talking about and that I have been talking about, they don't look like shifts to the same way to somebody who's like 20 years old now. It just looks like how it is,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, when I was 20, I didn't even know what was happening. Like, I was just like in the soup, like, but
Sorry, say that
yeah.
again?
I was like I didn't know what's happening. I was just like inside. Okay, so that's like a phrase that I say. We are inside the soup. So it's like we are submerged in it, but we are not aware of the world outside of the soup. But
Right.
Anyway, and I feel like all these like factors, like the market and like the industry and like all those business things that we think about now are not things that people would like naturally know during the early parts of their career. Yeah.
It's very weird to. I'm about to start my 4th semester teaching, and I'm struggling with how to articulate that because, like, I'm talking to, undergraduate age people, and trying to convey these like big, broad pictures and trajectories that I only sort of understand, and that what I know in a lot of ways feels obsolete. Yeah, anyway.
I don't know. I think
Tricky.
in my opinion, I feel like a lot of these things are things that you have to learn by going through it. Like it's very difficult for like newer artists in their career to understand like what's it like all these like trajectories and stuff like that unless they've gone through it themselves. Like that's how it felt like for me personally. Like, like I didn't really understand like what, things meant until I actually like saw it happen either to myself or to other people.
Yeah.
And then it's only, me now at I'm a mid-career artist now. I'm not new anymore. It's only now in this position I can understand how important it is to know about these things. But, again, it's like it's knowledge that has to be lived through, it has to be embodied. And I'm still like wondering like how do we even like teach that to like the newer generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that I remember theoretical things that I was told that it took living through to actually internalize. I guess that a lot of what you end up with going through education is just like learning habits at a deeper level, where when you get smarter about them, it's useful to have had them there the whole time, maybe.
And was thought to be more God than man. And when he died, he left behind warring empires, a common basis of Greek culture, and a memory that has fascinated men ever since.
You are in Australia? and you are from Malaysia, and you've written some about your experience interfacing with this industry in parts of the world that are not that don't have as firm and loud and expensive a comics industry. I wonder what this process that you're talking about has been like, getting an agent and getting in with the American comics publishing world. I wonder what that process has been like for you from that point of view.
Yeah, like a lot of these things I had to like figure out by myself, and like because at the time when I was like 14 or 15 or whatever, like there were a lot of like resources about like breaking into comics, but none of them were tailored to any place that is not North America. So, you know, I couldn't like participate in like the con circuit or go to trade shows or meet with editors or publishers or whatever, you know. Like it was just not something that I could actually physically access. And in Malaysia, there is no like equivalent like infrastructure, you know. There's barely any infrastructure. And whatever we have, it tends to be extremely corporate and extremely exploitative. And those were not options that I wanted for myself. Like, I think one of the things that I learned very hard during your generation of like webcomics was the importance of like maintaining like creator rights over your own work. And like there was such like an essential like core belief of mine since ages ago that I was like, okay, well, I'll just have to like make things up as I go. So I was just mostly like posting, and also I was like observing. Like I followed like a lot of like comics people whose art that I like, and just basically like observing how they navigate the industry themselves, and like whatever resource they posted, I just read through it. So it's like from these observations that I was able to get an idea of like, oh, what is the process of like pitching to an agent, you know, and what are the publishing alternatives and options for me, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I had all these like materials, so I had to like figure out, okay, I had to make a strategy for myself out of those like random bits and bobs of information. So yeah, that's like basically just what I did. I feel like a lot of my trajectory is like online. Like like I became a published author because of the things and of the friendships and the connections I made online only, you know. Like it was not until 2018, when I was 23, that I finally visited America for the first time, and finally got to meet people that I only knew online, you know. And I was like, oh, the American comics industry exists. Oh, you know, like all the things that I saw on TV, they are actually real things. So yeah, like yes, I am
Interesting.
born online. Yeah.
That feels very difficult to me. I mean, that feels lonely. I mean, there's some people around you that you came up with who are also in comics, even outside of that industry.
Yes.
But like the way that this shit became real for me was like being at conventions and meeting people. So that just feels difficult to me.
Yeah. I mean, like again, it's like it feels. It's not really lonely. It's just more isolated and difficult because of the physical distance. But I mean, there are comics artists outside of America. So like, I had a cohort that I came up with. So So for context, I'm part of the same cohort as Kay O'Neill, who does the T-Dragon Society graphic novels, and Avia Reese, who does the Witchy webcomic. So like these two, they are from New Zealand and Australia, and like we came up at around the same time. We started our webcomics and we became like published graphic novels at the same time, and with more or less the same type of trajectories.
It feels like an international medium, and it feels like we're all kind of in the same world making and understanding comics. But I'm in English-speaking America, so like it's hard for me to even imagine, and there's huge areas of just culture and comics that are just fully invisible to me. Mm-hmm. And there's huge just sort of structural privileges that anybody working in this country has, I imagine. Yeah, just thinking out loud. It's cool. I mean, it's exciting that you have been able to get something going in like a really, career functional, international kind of way. Mm-hmm. And that you have books out with big publishers and shit. Very exciting.
Yeah. And like I feel like a lot of that being able to happen is that I am fluent in English, so I'm able to like access the English speaking like comics world because of this. But if I had not been able to like speak English, or write English or whatever it is, like you'll be my options would be much more limited. And that's not to say that it's impossible, because like there is a very huge comics like market in places like Taiwan or China or Korea, Japan. But again, you do need to know how to speak the language in order to like access those industries,
Alexander the Great.
I think I'm just more interested in like the existential questions, basically, for me, like I think it's actually like very funny and very strange for me to like say this or think of this or whatever, but I never thought that you were like so young and such like a 20-something when you did Vice Boy. Like at that time I
was 18 or 19 when I started.
Oh, good grief. Okay. So I was like, so at the time I was 14 or 15, like reading it, and it felt like a work from someone who was like much more mature than me, and I think like me reading Vice Boy kind of has like the same like feeling as me being like a freshie in high school and you're like that cool student body president, valedictorian, and I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, wow, so cool. And like I at the time I didn't really have like a conceptualization of like, how silly it is being in your 20s, making stuff like that, until I actually reached that age and did the same thing that you did with the Carpet Merchant. So I'm curious to know, how does it actually feel like on your end, like at this point now, having known that you made such a landmark work in your 20s that informs everything that you do moving forward. And, do you think it's like a blessing or a bit of a curse?
I appreciate that. It goes to show, how much of it is just the vibe of something. Like I can look at that comic. I've not read Rice Boy in years, but I can look at it now and I can see the sort of posturing and the kind of like trying to present it as a more serious and confident work than it actually was. and I can see the ways in which it's definitely something made by a 20-year-old.
Yeah, same. Yeah, same
But
with
there's-
me,
but
my
there-
own work. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably a universal thing. But there's like ways in which I feel like there were things I was in touch with at that moment just because I was like a younger person just kind of beginning to grapple with a new type of storytelling for myself, and without the baggage of a career trajectory or really any hope that it would amount to anything. There's a freedom that I see in that I intermittently can recapture.
Yeah, like I'm only like interested in that because like, you know, like for me, like I hold the Carpet Merchant very closely as like a transformative, like wonderful experience. But I'm also like thinking like, you know, it's a privilege to even have that kind of work, you know, the Carpet Merchant, Rice Boy, you know, as part of your body of work, and to even like have the guts to like pursue it in the first place and to stick to its vision all the way to the end. Because, you know, I'm thinking of this because like I saw this thing a while back about how like some creators will like test out a webcomic concept like for a bit,
Yeah.
only to drop it, and then if it doesn't like become viral or popular or whatever, and then they repeat this thing over and over again until like something gets views or money or like an originals contract. And I'm just like, huh, what? how does this even work? I'm just like,
Yeah,
you know,
that's miserable.
yeah, that's like it's so strange and alien to me. And I feel like a lot of like artists are like younger artists are like cutting themselves off from the opportunity to like develop the kind of work that like shapes their craft and voice and everything, regardless of like its reception. So yeah, that's why I've just been thinking about it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I started Rice Boy not really knowing what webcomics were. I mean, broadly not really knowing, and just sort of putting it out there. So like anybody being interested was like a positive thing. And God, I can't imagine, you can't do this stuff if you're not just driven and fascinated by it. So what's the, if you're just starting things over and over again, trying to get something to hit with an audience, is that going to sustain you? What's it going to look like a year down the line when that audience is less engaged, or when webtoons.com, you know, gets bought out or dies or whatever? What the fuck are you going to do then? It's miserable.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I find it very difficult to like conceptualize like how does one become an artist if they don't like develop their work long enough for that. Because like, you know, it's like I feel like if you're just like starting and stopping all over again, it's like kind of like self-sabotaging like your own like your own, what is it called, like your own skill development. Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, I mean, I feel like generally comics on the internet have there's it seems like there's less cultural allowance for meandering amateurish work now than there used to be, though. So I feel like it's probably a much more like anxious, self-conscious space to start out now than it did when I started out.
Yeah, I agree. It feels more corporate now, like even though it's not supposed to be, and I don't think it is, but it just has the overall feeling very corporate. So
yeah,
which is
and
sad.
the technical skill. I mean, it's just there's so many more people, so it's so much easier to see just like virtuosic, incredible drawing, you know, than it used to be. Back in 2006, we were just happy to see anything out there, you know.
Yep.
Is it a blessing or a bit of a curse? A lot of the time it has felt kind of like I felt a little bit resentful of being tied to something that is locked in being 18 years old. But I have, over the past several years, become more comfortable with myself and my creative tendencies as as I have navigated them. When I started out, I remember having this feeling when I started out Rice Boy of like, oh, I'm just going to make comics in all sorts of different ways in media and genre or whatever. Mm-hmm. But you do a sort of thing for so long and you end up with a habit and a kind of trajectory and kind of tendencies that is, if you look at it a certain way, it can feel claustrophobic, but also it's kind of momentum in a direction. You know, you can make better things in that trajectory, so it feels more like a blessing now. I'm curious what planning looks like for you. Like you've done these large webcomics things where you're going front to back, but it seems like you plan fairly tightly. Am I wrong?
I mean, like tight enough, close enough, and not too rigidly though. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not too rigid. That's a good distinction. Yeah. And I guess when you're doing a book for a publisher, you're probably doing the standard thing of like tightly outlining and then executing it phase by phase.
Yeah, pretty much.
The normal way. Because I know on the Alexander website, you have the archive page that has all of these unfinished blank chapters indicating that you have a clear sense of the exact scope and size of the thing in advance. Is that kayfabe? I mean, how clear is it to you?
It is pretty clear. Like, yes, the chapters on the Alexander website are exactly the chapters that I have for it. And like, it's also like, you know, also silly because like there's 24 chapters in the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm like, oh, cool. But anyway.
That's cute.
Yeah.
That's cute.
I mean, there was like unintentional, but I was like, oh, okay, well, I might as well lean to it. But also at the same time, those are more or less the chapters that will be in there. And I do have a very clear idea of the ending, you know, and what I want to say, the message that I want to put out for my version of the Alexander romance, which is this super old like literary tradition where like artists from different times and places would reinterpret Alexander to their context. So like I pretty much like have a vision for it. It's that plan, but at the same time, you know, the most difficult thing
Not
for me
rigid.
is it's like to bridge it. Yeah, it's to figure out how to like bridge it, how to get from point A to B to C and all that stuff. And that's like, it's all of those small details that tend to like stump me sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I put that to myself. I call it brittle planning. Like there's types of planning that are really elaborate and detailed, but still flexible, and then there's parts of planning that lock you in where you can't change anything at all or stuff breaks. I feel like that's a distinction I'm only learning lately.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't call it brittle planning. I just call it more like, you know, like I am the type of person who likes to like plan things. So it's like when I'm traveling, I do research. I figure out what are the places that I want to go to, you know, and how many days I have, what is my budget, you know, like how far is this place, blah, blah, and then I make sure like I plan everything. I make sure that, you know, I can visit as many of these places that I want to go to as possible and not in a way that's stressful. But, you know, at the same time, I also allow for like times and opportunities to like just like wander around, you know, and like just explore and like walk and all that kind of thing. So so my travel plans are not super rigid, you know. It's like so I more or less apply. I do the same thing for like my comics.
That's a very evocative little analogy.
Yeah.
Okay. I was not expecting Alexander to be so metatextual. It's very cool. Right off the bat, you're like engaging with the tradition of interpretation and reinterpretation of the story. You are bringing these historical styles into comics in a way that is like just fucking very smart. I don't know. It's really cool to see, and you're
Thank you.
it feels like clear, like it doesn't slow the momentum. All these big weird formal moves. How does that feel like fundamental to the thing to you, or like what? How do I say this? When you're thinking about making this comic, do you start with, oh, I can engage with all these interesting formal tricks?
Yeah, like for me, like, you know, the metatextuality, and for those who don't know, it's basically just like, you know, a technique where you are like bringing in like outside text and directly like engaging with it and referencing it in your narrative. So like the metatextuality is a very like core part of the narrative for Alexander comic, because like, you know, the main reason why I was so compelled to take on a project like this is because like the tradition in which that I'm referencing, the Alexander romance, is like this, you know, like it's a 2,000-year-old thing, and it is constantly like even though it does not do it directly, it constantly like references back to its predecessors. So like, you know, iconic scenes and like thematic like concerns and all of that is like it's a thread that continues from the first Alexander romance all the way to the latest one, which is mine. And I'm just really interested in the way in which that my artistic elders have like navigated this, you know, and how they've like adapted it for their own like culture. So like in the Alexander romance, there are all these like different phases of Alexander. And my consultant, Richard Stallman, he said it best when he says that everyone has their own vision of Alexander the Great. So because like, you know, this man is like, he's so everywhere and people know everything and nothing about him except whatever construction exists in their mind, vaguely or otherwise. And the Alexander romance, like it leans into that appropriation of an ambiguous figure very hard. And that's the thing that I wanted to explore in my version of the Alexander romance. Like,
Cool.
and you know, like this postmodern like approach to it. I feel like you'll be like I felt like it would be an interesting take on it rather than just like, you know, retelling it the same old way, you know, the same old thing over and over again, you know, like I wanted to do something interesting with it. And also I also have like I have what's it called? I have an agenda actually. I don't know if it's a spoiler if I say this agenda right now, but I do have an agenda for it. I have a reason why I wanted to be metatextual. Because like the other thing also is that like this hints at the agenda, so I'm not going to say it directly. You figure it out yourself.
Yeah,
so like,
no
yeah, no pressure, no pressure. I'll just like, you know, if you figure it out, cool. Just don't tell other people. Shh. But anyway, like, so this other thing that I was thinking about is that, you know, like Alexander as like a literary and cultural figure, like he was so important for 2,000 years because he represented he represented a type of power that was more accepted and more commonplace back then. Royalty and the divine monarchy and all that kind of thing. That was just their way of life back then. That was just how they saw the world. But in the 20th and 21st century, we don't think like that anymore. And if the Alexander romance continues to be a thing, if we want to continue, what does it mean? What does it mean to like retell the story of a king in the 21st century when we no longer care about those things? We no longer believe in those things anymore, and nowadays power is not held by monarchy, it's held by corporate, it's held by capitalism, it's held by, all these things, all these other things that are not just the one guy with a crown or whatever, So it's like, what does it mean? What does it, like, how do you tell the Alexander romance for the 21st century? So I was like, okay, well, I gotta like figure that out. So those are like the things that I'm like sort of like churning and like ruminating in my mind. But yeah, that's basically like my thinking for it.
Cool. I mean, it's a lot of exciting moving parts. If you're because you're not playing it totally straight, then it feels like you're set up to engage with these big ideas of the thing. What I love is that you have the character within the comic even taking part in the myth making and like sort of self-consciously lying about himself or like going along with these things, these
because it's true, it happened in his real life. Yeah.
It's I don't want to talk too much about my work, but when I did this book, I did this book, The Harrowing of Hell, a few years ago, which is like an adaptation of the Gospel of Mark and some Christian apocrypha, and like this makes me think about that because there's ways of storytelling that people did thousands of years ago that are not entirely. We don't do it like that now, So it does it a disservice to just adapt something from 2,000 years ago in a straight sort of way, I feel like. So it's cool to see you engage with this stuff in like a really self-conscious and complicated and I guess postmodern way. And to do it in comics and like actually work in these different evocative historical styles that's just a fucking cool trick, and it feels like so. I don't know. It just feels like it's a nice little conceptual package. The whole thing.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
No, I loved reading it. How long? You're like halfway through it. Is that right?
Oh man, I'm not even halfway through it. There's only like 4 books, and I'm still like trying to figure out book 2 because of I was doing my master's for 2 years, and I also had a writer's block at the same time, so not great. But I'm hoping to get back into it soon. But yes, I'm on my way towards realizing my agenda.
Have you gotten your master's? That's exciting.
Yes, I have. I graduated last month.
Hey, congratulations. Cool.
Thank you.
Wow, so you got a lot of fucking moving parts here. Okay, so you're like a little over maybe a quarter of the way done of the thing. Is it, what's the plan? Are you going to try to do the whole thing and get it published or?
Yes, that is the
How's it
plan. Yeah, I mean, I'm more focused on like trying to finish it first while juggling my other obligations, but I do want to get it done. Because, again, like I said earlier, I feel compelled to do it, and I feel that it's necessary for me to do it because it's sort of like Alexander, like finishing Alexander, working on Alexander is like I feel like it's a very good representation of who I am as an artist and who I want to be as an artist. Like, and it's also an extension. It's like an evolution of what I did for the Carpet Merchant. Like, it's the next level type thing. So I'm just like, I feel like I need to finish it in order for me to completely realize myself as an artist in this new stage of my life. So again, basically too long didn't read. I am thinking I'm going to finish it, and also if there and if there are any opportunities tied to it, great. I mean, so far it has been like I have been quite lucky to have had the opportunities with it so far. Like it being like having its own artist edition, like published by Hiveworks, and a French translation from Kinae, and also it being featured as part of an exhibition in the British Library.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It was part of like the British Library, they were doing this exhibition on the Alexander romance, and it just so happened that mine was relevant. So yeah. So that's pretty cool. So I'm just going to see where it goes as I'm finishing it. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's not a way that I would have. It's an interesting way of putting it. Talking about it being an expression of yourself and an expression of where you want to go as an artist. That feels like an exciting feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I consider it. I hope that it'll be like one of the best works that I will do. But who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, you can't stress out too much about that. I mean, you have to be motivated by wanting to do it, not get to be in the moment of doing it.
Yeah.
Hiveworks published I don't even really know how Hiveworks works, but you are mirrored on there or something?
No, I'm not. So it's not. I'm not being mirrored. I am on it. Like, so.
Oh yeah, they don't. They don't. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So like Hiveworks, like it provides like hosting and other like services for webcomics artists under their program. So like I used to be part of their originals program, but so like for the entirety of book one, I was paid a page rate to work on it. Wow. But I have changed strategy now, so I'm no longer part of the originals program, but I'm still hosted on Hiveworks. Like the website is still being maintained by them, and it's still part of their catalog kind of thing. So it's like, yeah.
And they do book production and sell and fulfill your book orders.
Yeah. That was the main reason why I wanted it to be attached to Hiveworks, is because of like the ability to like do a Kickstarter and fulfill that. It's always the fulfillment part that scares me the most with regards to like crowdfunding.
The scary part, absolutely.
Yeah, especially as someone who's living in Australia, like shipping can get really expensive, and the reality is that a lot of my readership is based in the US. So like try to imagine like shipping between Australia and US. Like, no, thank you. I'm not interested in like dealing with that nonsense. So yeah.
Reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know they had some page rate deal. That's wild. What? So you talked about a shift in strategy about the comic since the first book was finished. Why? Wherefore?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big deal. I think it's just like I just wanted more like freedom now. Like, I mean, it's not that like Hiveworks was like restricting me creatively or whatever. I think it's just more like, because like when you get a page rate, you do have to like make concessions. So it's just like in my case, like in order to get a page rate, you are like Hiveworks would have like exclusivity with regards to like the print like distribution and the print licensing. And that's fine and that's good and all, but I'm like, like for me, like I am a bit more of like I feel like this is like my own personal problem, but I feel like I'm a bit more of like a controlling person when it comes to like the ways I want to control like the distribution and the licensing and all that kind of stuff for my webcomics. It's only for my webcomics. It's not. I don't think the same way for like my traditionally like published works. So I'm just like, okay, well, I think I prefer that. I prefer like be gaining more control on Alexander Comic, but that means that I have to exit the Originals program in order for that to happen. So, for future books 2, 3, and 4, I would not be getting a page rate from Hiveworks, but who knows? I may be getting an opportunity elsewhere. So, again, we will see. We will see how it goes. Yeah.
I wish you luck. You don't talk down about that though. I mean, you have a clear sense of what you own, what concessions you're willing to make. I mean, that fucking feels reasonable to me, especially when you're talking about a project that can only exist because you're doing it in this particular fascinated, self-directed way. That feels like the direction with momentum for you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm lucky that Hiveworks is pretty flexible about that. So that I'm able to do this kind of thing at all, So, yep.
Comics devices. You started that a few years ago, and it's like
no, not a few years ago. It's like so I unofficially started it in 2021, I think. And I was just like casually like doing research and like finding and like just like documenting what devices are there, and then it was only in 2024 that I finally reached the point in my casual research where I'm like, okay, well, this is as much as I could find on my own. I may as well just publish it, make it public, and let everyone look at it and help me. So I released the website comicsdevices.com online in October. Wait, it's not in 2024. Sorry, I keep getting confused about because it's like 2025, right? No, it's in 2023 when I thought about, okay, I should just publish it as a website. So that's when it happened. So, yeah.
And it's like an encyclopedia of narrative devices within
visual narrative
comics storytelling. Sure. And you laid out a whole bunch of them to start, but then it's like open to contributions.
Yep.
What is your thinking with this project? It is cool. What drives you to make a thing like this?
Well, because I think comics is cool. Like part of the reason why I wanted to make comics is because I realized it's such a ripe medium for experimentation and doing the things that prose literature can't do. And part of that was like how flexible and how inventive comics can be in like pushing and pulling time and space, all on the flat page. So that was like the thing that got me into it. And then as I got older, I got more experience, I felt that there was something that is preventing more people from realizing this. Like, I mean, obviously, us cartoonists, we know and we get why comics are cool, but we just can't seem to be able to make other people realize that. And I feel that a lot of that is because we learn our craft through osmosis. We read and read and read and we draw and draw a lot until one day we understand it, we get it, and we apply our knowledge intuitively. So we actually, like, as cartoonists in practice, we never really needed to name the type of panel or technical thing that we are doing. Like unlike in film, for example, where they will have names and categories for different types of like cinematic shots, because they have to work more collaboratively between people. So they needed to have language for that. So like cartooning, we didn't really need that because like, and at the same time also like amongst us, we telepathically know what we're doing. like if I see a pretty cool layout, I can understand like what is happening, what are the devices that are being used. And I don't need to like say the name of these devices to understand like, oh, this cartoonist is doing that. They are doing this to like present a meaning, blah, 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 that kind of thing. But this like tendency to not articulate things and just like draw, just to focus on the drawing, just to focus on the reading, it means that we are unable to explain to the public, to non-cartoonists, like what it is that we do, and why comics, cartooning is different than any other medium, like film, like prose, like whatever. So like, in desperation, when we are put into these situations where we have to talk about our craft, we tend to like reach to the language of film, to describe or name what we are doing, because that is the closest equivalent that we can find. And then, the public follows the example and they do it too. They use the language of film. And this puts comics at a disadvantage, because when they are using the language of film to talk about comics, they are already comparing comics to film, a more sanctified medium, and they are comparing it to superhero films mainly. So, in the end, comics ends up being like the loser art form, and thus like you keep seeing like journalists or editors or librarians, like unintentionally keep talking about comics using the same old bam, boom, pow linguistic brain poison.
They're not just
that
for
kind of
kids
thing. Yeah, that
anymore.
kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like, so this cycle of like unseriousness continues, and I'm here, I'm seeing all this happening. I'm bored of that. And I know this is not the reality, because I'm also aware that comic scholarship, it has advanced so much since Scott McCloud's two textbooks, and they have been making the academia has been giving so much like headway into like identifying and analyzing comics and its devices. Like they already have names and descriptions for these things, but the problem is that academics rarely communicate with people outside academia, and that includes cartoonists. So we have this like weird scenario where like academics have names to devices that cartoonists don't have names for, and vice versa. So I'm like, okay, well, since I am able to access these two worlds, I wanted to build a centralized repository, to catalog what each part of the comics industry, comics ecosystem, more like what they have already identified and as devices, and also to name and describe some of the ones that that both parts of the ecosystem have not already identified. So that was just my thinking for the comics devices library. And like I do hope that it does like allow people the language to talk about comics as it is, you know.
Yeah. Cool. So that's a very like ambitious, like ideological project. I mean, I there's not a lot of, I guess because it's, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but in part because it's less institutionalized academically, and it's more pulpy and low rent. We just don't have a lot of stuff like this. We don't have a lot of discussion in these terms. Everybody points to like the one Scott McCloud book from decades ago, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it is time for something like new, I guess. But also, like, I feel that because comics culturally has been such a dominated medium for so long, that a lot of like older cartoonists tend to have this like self-deprecating thing where they feel like if they talk about comics more intellectually, more seriously, they're being stupid for doing that. You know,
I have
because
that.
like
I have
because it's like comics is so silly, it's so unserious. What's the point of like treating it like high art or whatever, blah blah blah, that kind of thing, you know? and also there's also the other aspect where there's this fear that if you say the thing that it is that you're doing, you are losing the magic of doing it. You know, like it's not a mysterious art form anymore. You know.
Right. It's like it's mystified in certain pompous fine art ways, and then it's demystified in ways that can also be unproductive, as you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel that, you know, because like comics, like in recent decades, comics has become more and more like it's starting to interface more and more with the public. They're starting to like see it more present in the wider culture, and even in what we would call like the fine art world. Like we're starting to see it being more of a part of an institution. And it's like if we want to continue like comics, you know, like comics presence and place in society, you know, if the public, we have to figure out how to talk about it, you know.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah, because again, you know, we have no choice but to, at some point, we have to interact with like journalists, to executives, to librarians, to editors, to whoever, you know, people who don't have this intuitive knowledge that we do. Like we have to talk to them, and if we want them to take our work seriously, if we want them to give us money, to give us grants, to give us residencies and all of those kind of things that's needed to support like a sustainable arts career, we have to know how to talk about our form, and we have to take it seriously. So that's just also my thinking with the devices thing.
Man, you are fucking serious.
Yeah.
It's no offense. It's very exciting to talk to you about this stuff. You have such a big picture in ways that I struggle to have, and I don't know. It's exciting to talk to you about it. I agree. I mean, I wouldn't have thought it, I don't think, and I obviously didn't think it to the extent of undergoing a project like this. But it does annoy me when people describe, for instance, comic storytelling using the language of film, something that a lot of professors that I've talked to and that I do now myself, when we're talking through storytelling decisions in comics with students, we all discourage using camera language, right? You don't talk about the camera moving in or whatever. You talk about it using some language that decenters film, because if we're talking in terms of film, then we're just necessarily invisibilizing all the things that comics itself can do endemically. So, yeah, I don't know. It's cool to see that so put into such fucking focus. How many of these devices do you have up here?
I think 70, almost 70.
Cool.
And there are probably a few more that's still in progress. But yeah, it's like a huge library of like devices, because like there's also one other cool thing about comics is that, we tend to reach to the language of film to talk about comics. But because comics is a hybrid medium, it borrows a lot from a lot of like places like poetry, in rhetoric, in prose, in theater even. So we borrow a lot of these things. And, when we only use film to talk about comics, we ignore those other influences, these other parts of that makes comics. So I wanted to like put that into focus as well. It's fine to use film to talk about comics, especially because there are some because we do borrow quite a few like compositional techniques from film, and for me I think it's better to use the same terms for it. But
Yeah.
we do need to expand the way that we talk about it.
Yeah, and we need to be aware when we are, we need to be aware as if we're making a decision when we are using language from film, so that we don't sort of disempower the medium for ourselves, and so that we don't do the thing that everybody does where they think of like film as the ultimate, most real, quote unquote, type of storytelling, right? Which is like the reflexive thing that I feel like we all do in modern visual culture. Mm-hmm. Comics are real now that there's Iron Man movies and shit.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really I just want people to appreciate comics as itself and not as a stepping stone to other mediums. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That's the dream. Well, we make them appreciate it by taking our work in comics so seriously. So cheers to that.
Yeah, and I don't really care if it's like if some people think it's like taking it too seriously, I feel like it's a necessary like strategy nowadays, because otherwise it's like, I feel like because of the fact that comics is becoming such a huge part of the institution and such a huge part of culture, it's also like ripe for being like exploited and appropriated. And if we don't like take control of like our own art form, then other people will take advantage of that. And like I'll rather like, my way of doing it is like giving people the tools and the language to talk about it, so at least they have the agency of like, of being able to like describe their own work and being able to like pitch their own work to other people, so that they're able to like get the kinds of opportunities that will make it possible for them to keep making good work.
And the way in which we look at our world now in our next program. So please join us there.